Good evening, everyone. This is Tanya Coogan. I'm the manager of Chapter and Member Engagement for ACR. I'd like to welcome everyone for this session of the Chapter Leadership Advancement Series. Tonight, the session is on the ACR Council and ACR 2016. I'll be turning it over to our two speakers, Dr. Harrington and Dr. Swan, shortly, but I wanted to do a bit of housekeeping before we get started. This is your session. We hope that you will ask questions and participate in that way. We're going to hold questions likely until the end. If something pops up as we're going through the slides and you have a question, you have two ways to do that. You can type it into the questions box, and then we'll make sure that's addressed at the end. You can also send it to us as a chat message. We'll just make sure that we put those on queue and your questions are answered. At the end, we also encourage you to use the raise hand function on your menu screen, and what we can do is unmute you, and then you can directly ask your question that way. So with that said, oh, and last but not least, the session is being recorded. So if you know anyone from your chapter that should be able to listen to this later on, we'll make sure that we have it up on the Chapter Leadership Advancement Series YouTube channel, probably within mid to late week, but we'll send out an email with the link to the session that way. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Trina Behani.
Great, thank you, Tanya. So this is Trina, Director for Governance and Member Engagement at ACR, and one of the staff members, along with Lauren Alfaro, who has joined us on the call this evening as well, for our Council Steering Committee. So we're happy to have Dr. Bill Harrington and Dr. Tim Swan with us tonight, our Council Speaker and Council Vice Speaker, respectively, to present this session in advance of the 2016 ACR annual meeting, and specifically our Council meeting, to provide our counselors and alternates and other chapter leaders or staff that have joined us this evening to provide a bit of an overview about the meeting itself, how to prepare for, participate in, and then follow up on the meeting. And so with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Harrington to kick things off for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Trina and Tanya. I want to welcome everyone who's joined us on the call. Tim and I, as well as the staff, appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to participate. I know many of you may have participated last year, but many are perhaps new to the upcoming meeting and council activities, and I hope all of you will find tonight's participation helpful. We're going to cover three basic areas, and Tim and I will be dividing the presentation as well. We'll cover preparing for the meeting, participating in the meeting, and expectations after the meeting. First, for meeting preparation, resource material is available online, and we published that fact in our by Speaker Council News, which we sent out by email several weeks ago. You may reach this by acr.org, select Annual Meeting subheading Governance blue bar at the top of the web page, and you'll see the ACR governance page on this screenshot. So acr.org, go to the subheading of the annual meeting, and this will come up when you hit governance. Selecting council resources and orientation materials takes you to this page, seen in the displayed screenshot. It's here that you have the podcast, the counselor handbook, procedures of the council, etc. You can see the list there. However, some materials are not yet available, and utilizing this page for all of those items specific to this meeting should presently not be accessed through this page. You can see here in yellow are a couple of the resources that are not yet available. Coming soon are the ACR annual meeting council volunteer committees, the handbook, the procedures of the council, standing rules, and scenario cards. For example, the link on the resource page takes you to the procedures of the council for 2015, not 2016. So what I'd recommend you do is use Download Central or the ACR 2016 app to access documents specific to this year's meeting. Obviously, bylaws, things like that haven't changed. Here you can see a list of what is available now. The documents are downloadable as PDF files. If you go to the next slide there for me, I think. And there's a link at the bottom of the page that I have an arrow on that is other counselor resources. And this will take you to things such as Sturgis parliamentary motions, electioneering policy, as well as links to other documents like the ACR bylaws and the digest of council actions. Per my example earlier, you see that procedures of the council is coming soon. Also coming soon is the ACR election manual, though you probably noticed that candidates for various positions in the last ACR bulletin, in addition to the gold medalist and honorary members for this year's meeting. There are a number of resolutions under consideration this year. I would also point out that the resolution last year proposed by the CSC, written by the representatives of the RFS on the CSC, which was referred, radiologist as clinician, has reappeared as Resolution 32 on this year's calendar. Note that there are 3 bylaws resolutions. Resolution 42A changes the editor of the JACR to a staff position rather than a BOC position. 42B would establish a YPS position on the BOC serving a term of 2 years. And 42C was requested by Council last year to move the election of the RFS representative to the Inter-Society Conference to the RFS rather than that position being elected by Council. Summaries of the reasons for these changes are provided along with the new wording or new sections when you do that PDF download. And while we can discuss these bylaws changes further if time permits, that's really not the purpose of tonight's meeting, to get into the weeds of discussing the pros or cons of different items. Now for participating in the meeting. Take advantage of the schedule at a glance to keep track of the governance activities. Go to your caucus meetings, take part in the on-site orientation so you know where things are located. Take advantage of the speaker's hour before the plenary sessions. Tim, the parliamentarian, and I will be there to help you in how to craft a motion or advise you on a course of action following publication of the reference committee reports. Tim will be talking in more detail about this in a moment when he talks about the special sessions and reference committee hearings and reports. And I know that for a lot of you, parliamentary procedure can be challenging and can appear very arcane, but its purpose is to allow an assembly to conduct business while respecting the rights of an individual or group to be heard, but preventing an individual or a minority from stopping the conduct of business by the majority. And it's our purpose to facilitate this business, not to embarrass anyone who might not understand how to address council. And this is an opportunity to make sure you know how and what you want to propose and what action to take. These resources you see here are available now, as we've seen previously, though I did not show a screenshot of the mobile app. I'll just give you a personal example. I use an Apple iPhone, and I went to the Apple iPhone store, queried ACR 2016, and it was listed as an app, and I downloaded it. I was able to run it immediately, but did get a prompt to sign in, and it asks for your first name, last name, then your email. It sends you a confirmation email that sort of proves that you're you, and there'll be a little bar on that confirmatory email that you click, and it sends a message back to the app, which then populates the app with your assigned code. And after that, whenever I run the app, my name is at the top of the app, indicating that it's taking into account those things that I'm responsible or want to schedule. Some changes for 2016 are outlined here. The caucus meetings will be Sunday morning. Last year they were in the afternoon on Sunday. The presidential address will be Sunday afternoon, last year in the morning, so that's the main reason for that flip-flop. Reports and awards will be done Sunday afternoon, previously done on Monday. And leadership reports are Monday morning, Previously, they were Sunday morning and afternoon. The one report that will not be included in the Sunday afternoon session is the RFS report, because there was RFS programming during that time slot, and Neil Law will give that report during a changeover of reference committees. I don't know which one, but when we go from reference committee 1 to reference committee 2 while people are moving into position, that may be the opportunity that we'll use. Open microphone will be a slight time change, and both the RADPAC reception and gala are on Tuesday evening rather than having the gala on Tuesday and the reception after the Hill visits on Wednesday. All the activities you see on this slide are unchanged. They're in their typical time slots. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over now to your very able Vice Speaker, Tim Swan.
Thanks, Bill. We'll continue the traditional counselor orientation and Q&A sessions again this year. On Sunday, I'll conduct an orientation session for new counselors from 7 to 8 a.m. And then on Tuesday morning, Bill and I, along with the parliamentarian, will be available for Q&A to help counselors understand the parliamentary rules that govern Tuesday afternoon's governance session. The caucus meetings are changing slightly this year, as Bill alluded to earlier, in an effort to get all the meetings into the Marriott venue and have them completed within a standard time frame. They'll be held from 7:30 to noon on Sunday morning, and they've been scheduled to limit as best as possible any overlap between geography and subspecialty caucuses. The schedule of these caucuses is available on the mobile app that Bill mentioned, and I encourage you to obtain and use that app. The schedule is also available as a PDF download on the ACR 2016 website. All resolutions this year have been assigned to one of 4 reference committees. We'll conduct the usual open hearings on Monday morning. This is the time for anyone interested in these resolutions to speak up and be heard. Generally, any comments made in the form of a proposed amendment, they should be made in the form of a proposed amendment that requires the person proposing the amendment to speak at a microphone to introduce that amendment. Reference committee members will take note of all comments, and in a subsequent closed session they will consider these comments and make recommendations in a report to be delivered to the council at the plenary session Tuesday afternoon. It's important to note the differences between the open hearings and the plenary session. The open hearing is a less formal session where anyone can speak to a resolution in a session governed by, quote, good manners. There will be time limits for each commenter to prevent dominating the mic and discussion. The plenary session on Tuesday is a formal session governed by parliamentary procedure rules within Sturgis's standard code, their 4th edition. A consent calendar is proposed and items may be extracted for later discussion. That consent calendar is largely the result of the reference committee deliberations. The consent calendar is then voted upon, followed by consideration of the extracted items, and those extracted items will be considered individually. Only councilors have the right to speak at the plenary session, although non-councilors may be recognized by the presiding officer for specific comment on a resolution where their expertise would be valuable for the council. There are resources for councilors on the ACR Download Central website, which Bill showed you earlier. You can access that Download Central from the ACR 2016 website or go directly to it using the link at the bottom of this slide. There are several resources listed on this slide that may be of benefit to you in preparation for the governance track of the meeting. So Bill, I'll turn the discussion back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. So now we're going to talk about after the meeting. So what are the expectations? Well, it's very important for you to provide feedback. Each year we task a council steering committee work group, generally work group 1, with reviewing your feedback and making recommendations for improvements for future meetings. For the councilors, you should also think about requesting time at your chapter board meeting or annual chapter meeting to provide a report of the council actions and the discussions. Also, be sure to encourage your membership to provide their input during the 2016-2017 field review cycle. All those who participate with comments are invited to then join a reconciliation call during the late summer or fall, which are chaired by CSC members to incorporate what the group on the call considers a reasonable addition or amendment of the language. We hope to have a CSC liaison assigned to each chapter and society with council representation by Tuesday evening, and they will make an effort, although it's tough timing for everyone, to seek you out Wednesday at the breakfast, pre-Hill visit breakfast, just to meet and greet and put a face on your liaison, particularly if you haven't met them. Make sure to use them as a resource. If you don't know how to get help with an issue, they have become an expert in finding someone who can provide you with a satisfactory answer. Incredibly rarely, someone may come up against a wall where they don't know where to turn or didn't get a satisfactory answer. And again, your CSC liaison can easily contact me or Tim or Trina and Lauren to help direct the individual to a person who can hopefully help them with their problem. I'd also encourage you to continue your conversations on Engage. I hope people on the call have done that. It's been very interesting to watch the various threads that have occurred. It was for several years a wish that by members of the Council Steering Committee, in fact we discussed this in a work group several years ago that Jonathan Breslau and I served on, of coming up with a vehicle that would provide a more robust communication with leadership and with other counselors and alternate counselors. And it looks like this Engage platform is fitting that bill, and the early appearance is fulfilling the desire that we had of having you view your role as a counselor or alternate counselor as a 365-day-a-year job rather than 3 to 4 days in May every year at the annual meeting. So with that, I'd like to entertain any questions you may have, and I'll turn it back over to our staff to let us know if there have been some questions, or to call on people to ask questions on their audio once it's enabled.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Dr. Harrington and Dr. Swan, for the presentation. Just as a reminder, as Tanya mentioned at the beginning of the call, if you'd like to ask a question, you can type those into the question box and we'll see them. Alternatively, there is an icon where you can raise your hand. If you'd like to ask a question, we'll then unmute you and give you the floor to ask the question. One has come in already, and the question is specifically with respect to the caucus schedule. Has it been published, including the caucus titles, locations, and times? I think Ralph Lieto for posting that question, and I can actually answer that. The schedule for Sunday in terms of the subspecialty and geographic caucuses has been finalized. The meeting room locations are still being confirmed by our meeting services staff, and those will be available within the next 1 to 2 weeks. And so as soon as those locations in the Marriott Wardman Park are assigned, that full schedule will be published. We can provide it to everyone as is with the times at this point, so you can at least get started on your schedule, and the locations will follow.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that question on the caucuses too, if I may. You realize, of course, that the caucuses are not officially recognized by the ACR. Meeting space is provided, time is provided for people of like mind or specialties or regions to get together and discuss items of business that are before the council or will be before the council. And so one of the things that was brought up in various questionnaires was difficulty in some of the subspecialists in being able to get to their subspecialty caucuses, yet simultaneously try to attend their regional caucuses. So that's the reason we tried to help with doing that schedule so that there was as little overlap as possible. Another advantage to the swap in the schedule so that there won't be programming going on during caucus meetings, so you won't miss programming. That's one feature. Number two, being in the Marriott will obviously facilitate the online or being able to get online in the hotel, which was an issue in the Omni Shoreham last year, and I don't think there's any plan to provide ACR sponsored web services in the Omni Shoreham again this year, as best I know. And we'll also try and, if there is not a CSC member of a caucus, we'll try to have someone come by. Their purpose in being there is to answer any questions, provide any background information to the caucus. They're not there to bring back to me or Tim, tell me what they were talking about. That's not the point. The point is to try and help, and there may be some background information you wish to have as to why some subject, we talked about the bylaws before, what led to the consideration of these bylaws changes over and above what's printed as the reasons for these changes. So just so you know, there might be someone who's not typically a member of your caucus that will be there, that will either be me, Tim, or someone from the CSC, and we're only there to try and help you. I think it was several years ago that a particular CSC member was accused of being a spy. We have no spies. This is just trying to help.
Okay, great. We do have another question from Sean Reisman. When is the RADPAC donation deadline to be able to attend the gala? And that deadline is April 30th. So contributions of at least $1,000 are required for an invitation to the gala itself by April 30th. For the reception, there is not a deadline in terms of any contribution. There's not a minimum on that either. So donors at any level are welcome at the reception. The next question. The next question we have is let's see, will there be electronic voting this year again? Dr. Harrington, would you like to address that?
Yes, there will. And today, Tim and I were on a ACR 2016, what I think is probably the last program committee meeting before the meeting. And the app was shown off, and they weren't able to actually show going into the voting, but electronic voting will be available again. We're hoping and are assured that the app will be much easier to negotiate. There should be a little banner that'll come across the top that says vote here, and you should just be able to click that on your device, and it'll take you directly to the voting page with the selections that you need to make.
There is one additional thing, Bill. Just remember that when they go to the voting page, they're going to have to log in separately. So it's going to require a second login with your ACR password and login information.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't entirely sure if they were going to link that or not, but I wasn't certain what I was hearing Scott talk about today with regard to that.
That's what I heard him say this afternoon.
All right. But we're hoping it won't be and we're assured it won't be a menu under a menu under a menu like it was last year that people were having problems negotiating. We will not do electronic voting by the telephone or your personal device for those items during the plenary session that require a vote. We have learned that when you try and take a vote that is so time sensitive that you have to get results right away, we overwhelm the servers. When you have a three-hour window this year, Trina, for the voting?
Correct.
Yeah, 3-hour window, it's not an issue. It's easy enough. Now, you got to be on site to vote. You can't be downtown at the mall and decide, ooh, I got to vote. You have to be on site to do it and be picked up by an on-site server. That's a legal requirement we have as a corporation. But yeah, you will be able to vote on your personal device. Again, we'll probably be making the admonition that voting on your personal device should be a personal matter, and we shouldn't have little clutches forming that says, okay, everybody here, let's vote for so-and-so. It's fine to have those discussions in your caucus, in your state chapter, but no one should be pressured to vote in a certain way by some sort of group gathering in which to cast the vote. Think of your personal device as walking into that voting booth and closing the curtain behind you.
Okay. Next question we have is, can counselors use the Engage platform to discuss resolutions before the meeting? How would those discussions factor into reference committee discussions?
The answer to that is you can use the Engage portal for whatever you want to discuss. However, in order for something to be considered by the reference committee, you have to come to a microphone and state what it is you'd like to see changed or done. Number two, you have to provide that in writing. Both of those things have to occur for the reference committee to be able to consider it. So if you provide something in writing but you don't go to the microphone or vice versa, it's thrown out. It's not considered. And every year we have one or two issues like that where someone has gone to the microphone but didn't provide their stuff in writing, or we get something in writing but no one can recall that anyone went to a microphone and said anything like what's in writing.
Okay. Next question we have is, would you explain the responsibilities of an alternate counselor?
Tim, you want to take that one?
Sure. So an alternate counselor responsibility is to stay abreast of what's happening in council, so that when a counselor is not available at the time of a vote, an alternate counselor can be substituted in place of the counselor for conduct of business at the meeting. Now that can be an alternate counselor holding a counselor's position for the entire meeting because a counselor, say, had an unexpected family emergency and couldn't attend the meeting. Or it could be something as simple as I, a counselor, would like to go to an educational session. Would you, alternate counselor, take over for me in my stead?
But in order to do that, you have to go to the credentials desk, and you have to have you can't hand off at the blink of an eye. You actually have to be credentialed as a counselor from the alternate counselor position, and that requires a signature, I think, of your state chapter president and secretary. Is that correct, Trina? I think that's
it's either or.
Either or. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And your chapter staff can do that as well. So an executive director, executive secretary can authorize that change, and then it will be processed accordingly by the credentials committee.
And because of that, I would recommend that, let's say you're in a situation where someone who's a counselor can stay for part of the session but can't stay for the whole session. It's probably best that they go ahead and hand off their counselor position before the entire plenary session. There's not going to be the ability to take credentials and change someone from alternate counselor to counselor during the plenary session. That's just not going to be feasible. The members of the credentials committee are counselors, and so they're in the session as well. They're not out at the desk anymore at that point.
Okay. The next question that we have is, how much of the governance activities can be attended virtually?
Everything but the open hearing and the plenary session technically. Obviously, it's much better if you're there. Nothing says you have to be at all the government's activities. If you, for example, let's see, Monday afternoon there's economics 1 and 2. If you're someone who can't stand economics and you'd rather go do a CME offering, you could do that. But I would recommend you really take your position as a counselor or alternate counselor very seriously, and make sure you attend the keynote address, the president's address, the candidate speeches. You know, you really need to know who these people are and what it is they wish to do in order to make an informed vote on Monday morning. And then there are the reports and awards. Obviously, when Mickey Gubitro gives you a report from the ABR, I think people are going to find that of great interest with the changes that are occurring there with the MOC. And then, you know, Monday morning is reports of the Chairman of the Board of Chancellors, the Treasurer's report, the Speaker's report, and then the open hearings. And then Tuesday, you have an open microphone that's going to be held, and you're going to have a speaker for the Morton lecture that I'll let Tim tell you about. And then the plenary session in which we actually vote and accomplish business of the college, followed by the update for the Hill. So all of those activities, I think, are really important for you to go to, and I would be very disappointed if you thought that being able to watch them on a screen in your room or off-site would be a satisfactory way in which to fulfill your duties.
I'd just tag on to that to add about even the economic session. One of the responsibilities of a counselor is to become educated and bring information back to your chapter. While a lot of the information that will be presented at the economic session is available through the ACR bulletin or JACR, it still would behoove you as a counselor to participate and learn as much as you can so you can be a resource to your chapter as it considers what its activities will be during the coming year. As far as the Morton lecture this year, it's going to be presented by Andrew De La O. He is a patient advocate, and I've asked him to talk about how we as radiologists can better interact with patients. And he's got some interesting ideas and methods of doing so, so I hope you'll find that lecture stimulating.
Okay, next question we have is with respect to the Download Central materials that have been marked as coming soon. When will it be reasonable to expect those to be available? And I can answer that one from the staff perspective. We are working with our speaker and vice speaker to finalize edits to those documents, and so I would anticipate within the next week, 2 weeks at the most, those materials will be finalized and posted, and we will certainly make an announcement via the Engage platform, via our council news when the updated materials are available. And the last question that I'm showing right now is asking if we could please restate the name of our parliamentary reference text that we use for this meeting. I'll let you take that, Dr. Harrington or Swan.
Sure. Sturgis Code, Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure, 4th edition. There is a 5th edition, which does not have the name Sturgis in it. And we may well in the future change to that edition, but one of the things we don't want to do is, and we've talked about this, is say, well, we'll just use the latest edition of the Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure put together by the American College of Parliamentarians. The problem with that is, what if they came out with an addition 2 days before the meeting? So that's the reason we have a fixed volume, and it works perfectly well. You know, you hear people talk about meetings being done under Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order looks like the Encyclopedia Britannica. It covers every conceivable thing you can imagine in a meeting. Sturgis is used by the vast majority of organizations, or at least the standard code is, because it takes on 98 to 99% of the things that are going to occur in a meeting or a business meeting like this. And it also handles, I think you'd find it an interesting read, even in your committee work on with hospitals or with other organizations that you might serve. I think that book is available. I know it's available on Nook, the Barnes & Noble app. I'm not certain it's available in its 4th edition on like the Amazon Kindle. It's a small book, and it's relatively inexpensive.
I did pick up a copy of it on Apple's book app through their store, so I do know it's available there.
Yeah. In print, it's $14.95. I just pulled it off my shelf.
Okay. The last question that I have, and I do not know the answer to, but I'm going to state it and then say that I will follow up with an answer afterwards, which is when will the talking points for the Capitol Hill visits be available online or on the website in advance of the meeting? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure if Drs. Harrington or Swan do, but I certainly can find out, and we can make that answer available to everyone who's on the call with us this evening.
Yeah, this has been something people have talked about for years, having that information more in advance. There are 2 reasonable reasons, I think, that I know I've heard from Josh Cooper and from Ted Burns in the past. Reason number 1 is being nimble. Even though we may have what we think is a hot button issue, the way Washington works, as you well know, is that may become something far less important than the latest item that's come up in the Congress. Number 2 reason for not putting that information out in advance is that information you put out goes everywhere. Even though it may be behind your username and password, and you're going to be good and you're going to keep it under your vest, that becomes then potential fodder for someone who wants to go and present counterpoints to what it is you're going to be presenting. I can recall a couple of years, it was maybe 2-3 years ago, we were preceded by the cardiologist 2 weeks before the ACR got there. And there was substantial information with regard to the in-office ancillary exception and self-referral. The cardiologists were basically, they gave a map and showed where all these cardiologists were located, and then gave a map of where radiologists were located. Well, what they did was they used a map of where they lived as cardiologists, not where their practice was in their nuclear medicine cameras. And when I went in one of my congressman's offices, he showed me all these different counties that were served by cardiologists. And I said, there was no radiologist in the county in which I live. And I said, you know, I live right there in that county. What they've done is said where they lived and said there's a nuclear medicine camera there, and the answer is no, it isn't. It's in Athens, Georgia, in the just down the street from the hospital, just like ours is. So that's a personal example of how people can use information against you. So I know that doesn't entirely satisfy. People would like to prepare a little more in advance, and I think government relations staff are cognizant of that and are doing their best to kind of come up with some happy medium. With that, I have to tell you, I have no idea when they're going to tell us what it is they want us to talk about.
Okay. I don't see any hands raised or any further questions that have come in through our chat box. Dr. Harrington, Dr. Swan, I don't know if you have any closing remarks that you'd like to make here at the end of our call.
I'd just like to say thanks to everyone who took the time to participate tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. I know everybody's really busy, and I hope you found this useful. If you didn't, email Trina and let her know this was a waste of your time, and we'll take that into consideration for next year. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. We will thank everyone, and certainly if you do have any questions afterwards, please follow up. Myself, Lauren Alfaro, stand ready to assist with any questions that you may have in advance of the meeting or once you're on site. We look forward to seeing you in DC. And
Thank
it looks
you.
like someone gave me a second on that motion to adjourn. So with that, we will say good night. Thank you to all for joining us.